Shemai guys and girls, JonnyVR here with my review for the 7th episode of Doctor Who Series 12, Can You Hear Me? And just want to say thanks very much for watching this. If you haven't already, click like and subscribe because we are doing a giveaway when we reach 1,000 subscribers. So we are giving away Comic-Con tickets to a convention that we'll be going to this year. So when we reach 1,000 subscribers, that's what we'll be giving away, and you get a chance to come and say hello, and we can thank you personally for supporting this channel. So yeah, as usual, the first part of this review is going to be spoiler free, and then I'll give you a notification or a little spoiler warning when I'll start going into more of the stuff in the episode. So, Can You Hear Me? For me, it's an episode that almost gets everything right. The new writer, Charlene James, I think she does a really good job. The fact that it's co-written with Chris Chibnall, though, really confuses me because it's hard to tell whether, how much is actually hers and how much is Chris Chibnall. More on that later on, but for the most part, it's a solid episode. It's another solid episode. This series, is it better than Praxis? Yeah, definitely. It's a good episode. Is there something behind it? Probably. If you go into this episode thinking if there's something behind this episode politically, then I'm not gonna like it, then you probably won't like this episode. I didn't know what to expect this episode, and I ended up liking it not until I liked it, and then I found out what the point of the episode was, what the story was, and it fits. It's probably, I don't know, it feels better. Okay, it does feel better because it is sort of heartwarming towards the end, and the kind of the message behind it is a good message. And I think whereas the messages behind Orphan 55 and Praxis, they do feel in your face and they're telling you what to do, and that's I can see why people don't like that. Whereas this message is more of, it feels like the point they're trying to get across is more, is a message that more people will connect with, I think. Because I think more people will understand this message and really relate to it, whereas most people already know, not, you got to recycle, you got to look after the planet. Most people already know that. So there's a message in there, and it's sort of subtly done within the narrative of the episode, but not so subtle in what the episode does. Again, more into that in the spoiler section, but for the most part, it's a good episode, and we get some brilliant villains. The villains and the sort of the production of this is really good. When it goes into their backstory, they do a really neat little thing with the show that's not that it's new, and we don't really see very often in Doctor Who. But the villains are great. Oh my gosh! The First of all, that the creature that we saw in the Next Time trailer, really cool, really cool. You find out what it is and stuff like that. It's a really good explanation. A little bit CGI can be a little bit disappointing, but it's good. They had a really strong presence whenever they appeared. But the man in the piers in the trailer, played by Ian Gelder, brilliant. And there is twists and turns that make for really good TV. It does almost fall into the trap that a lot of other episodes fall into, when the build-up is great, you get some great character scenes for the companions, really well written, but there is a hint of it's dealt with a little too quickly and a little too easily. But that was my one main thing about the episode. I wanted more. I wanted just that little bit more. But there is a big threat in this episode, and the music, when they make some reveals, the music is class. So yeah, it's solid episode. Not much more I can say without going into spoilers. So watch the episode, come back and see what I have to say about the rest of this episode. But here's your spoiler warning. So yeah, here we go. the beginning of the episode is sort of set up quite well, actually. You get a cold opening, which I really liked, and Chris Chibnall said that we get some in this series, and since the very first episode we haven't had one, so like 6 episodes later we get one, and he kind of wanted to do that so it would be unpredictable, which it works really well, because like, you know, I was half expecting it to be another, you know, hard opening with just the title sequence, but no, we get it, and it's a really good one. So really cool, straight in there, introducing us to these creatures, you know, the 3-clawed hands, you know, that looked so cool in the next time trailer. The full-on reveal of what they are, it's hard to explain really, because they are like really cool. Like, they look really cool. The hand pulling around the face is really cool, but like when they go face to face with them, it's like they made an animatronic for it. It looks like an animatronic, which again looks really cool, looks really lifelike. Later on, when they reveal it in its full, it appears in CGI, which again is a little bit, you know, bad, you know, because how, like, you know, it does take you out a little bit. You're like, that's obviously CGI, and you know, when it was the hand and when it was just the face, it looks more realistic. But when they appear in the CGI, they're a bit, you know, give or take. But yeah, get some really good character scenes. So the companions get dropped off, and you know, you get to see Yaz, you know, and Ryan and Graham all back to normal. You know, it's really good. They all get messages or nightmares, which is really interesting. It's a, you know, it's really interesting premise. The Doctor goes off to Aleppo to find out where this sort of monstrous roar was coming from that she heard. Obviously, you can see the guy in the TARDIS. When the TARDIS moves like and changes color, it looks awesome. But you know, he's pulling the strings, and we get to see the TARDIS a lot. We get to see the TARDIS do a lot in this episode. The TARDIS moves here, there, and everywhere. The column goes up and down. You get to see good TARDIS scenes, you know, where they're all chatting in the TARDIS. You know, good use of the TARDIS in this episode. Really happy with that. But something's going wrong. You know, they're basically, they all reconvene together when they're talking about like what's going on, how Graham's seeing stuff, how Yaz and Ryan are having nightmares and things like that. So they go to the place using that psychic thing that we've seen Graham use in the trailer, which does look like a Dalek, is not a Dalek helmet. So that's interesting to see how that works out. And they go into this sort of spaceship that's overlooking 2 planets that are about to collide, and there's something in the middle of it protecting them. And again, the planets look amazing, like when they're about to crash into each other. They do the whole zoom in, really good CGI there, but the CGI is not so good on the Jagaskas or whatever they call them. But yeah, really cool, and it really raises the stakes, because it felt like if you free the person, then the planets would collide. So that already seemed like a big decision. But they can't they needed to save this person. This villain, was called what was his name again? I can't remember. Zelin, yeah. He was a fantastic villain, and as an introduction into you know, an addition into the Who universe, really cool, because he literally, they introduce him as a god-like character. Even the Doctor is surprised when he introduces himself, and you know, turns out to be like legit. You know, he's like Eternals, you know, and his entire purpose is to just play games with humanity. Like, really cool. And it even references the celestial toy maker of old. So you know, really cool addition, and really good to see him going up against the Doctor, and you know, literally she calls him like a god, and he's, you know, he doesn't even deny it. So already, for me, that tells me that, right, you got this all-powerful nightmare god or whatever up against, So like the outcome better be clever now. If she's gonna save the day, it's got to be clever. And that's where it fell short for me a little bit because the whole it all was too quick. There's a great twist where the person who's actually calling for help is actually the Nightmare God's partner in crime, and there's two of them, and they get a really cool exposition cartoon where it talks about the story of the two planets and how they trapped one of them, and the other one, which was Zerlin, is gone off, on his own. Yeah, really cool little exposition cartoon. Again, it's like that kind of thing that you see in movies sometimes, but it was really cool. It was nice to see, and then the moment where it was revealed that the person who was trapped was actually the villain, and they just released her. The music there was really cool, and it really does like make you feel like, oh my gosh, he outsmarted the Doctor, and something big is happening right now. And and this is where I thought, oh my gosh, like, is this why Chris Chibnall is co-writing this episode? Is he like actually setting up something? Is the character who's been trapped really, really important? Like, is it just someone who we're supposed to know, or is it going to be a massive reveal? Not really, but like it's a good twist, and I appreciate that. And at this point, it was all going really well. I thought the episode was really strong. They then trap the companions in their nightmares, and also the Doctor, and we get this really confusing Yaz nightmare, which recurs throughout the episode. And if you were like me, I was like, am I supposed to know what's going on here? But it turns out we don't, because it'll all be explained later on. Ryan's nightmare is set up because we've seen in the past how his friends like don't like him going away, or they miss him, at times like that. His nightmare makes sense, and in his nightmare as well, he's speaking to an old Tebow who's his friend, and there's fire all around him, and they says, why is there fire? And it's because the earth is burning. And then lo and behold, the dregs from Orphan 55 appear. And if at this point you were like, oh my gosh, no, please don't, I'm having Orphan 55 flashbacks, why would you even do that? Yeah, me too. But it confuses me because it's like, right, that they've made reference to the planet like burning in Orphan 55 and in Praxis, and now again in this episode. And it's hard to tell whether they're actually like going for this as a story arc, like something that's going to have consequences, or like whether they're just throwing things in there to remind us about Orphan 55, which in their head was a really good way of getting people to look after the planet. Really hard to tell, because how are they going to fit that in with all the lone Cyberman and the Timeless Child and stuff like that? Interesting choice, but I hope that they just threw in the dregs in there just because they made them, so they might as well use them a couple of times, get their money's worth. But who knows? Are we in for a climate change story arc that's gonna they're gonna save the planet, or is that left up to the viewers? Who knows? But again, Graham's nightmare again makes sense because he's scared about the cancer, and really cool appearance from Grace again, because really cool. I didn't know that was coming. I guess you could say that was a bit of a surprise. Yeah, was kind of a surprise, but again, it really helps the emotional impact of that scene as well. And then you see the Doctor's nightmare, who gets like also chucked in a nightmare, and her nightmare is the Timeless Child, who we saw in the flashback. And yeah, I thought this would happen because when they're dealing with nightmares and fears, like I thought, this is how they're going to tie it into the narrative of the story arc. But yeah, we just see the Doctor looking at the Timeless Child. Nothing much more. Yeah, like pretty much you just get a better quality image of what we saw in Spyfall Part 2. So yeah, no doubt people will be analysing that. But yeah, then the two gods go to Earth, and they're gonna like steal everyone's nightmares. Fine, big massive threat. And then the Doctor escapes. Okay, did anyone else think like, how on earth her hands were like this, right? And the Sonic was in her pocket, and like one split second later, the Sonic was in her hand, like it just launched out of her pocket and into his hand. Again, that's a nitpick. That really is a nitpick. But come on, like how does that even happen? How do they look at that and think, I know they can just get the Sonic from her pocket without using hands? Great. But yeah, the Chigaskas were cool. They weren't attacking because they were a figment of this other character's imagination or nightmares, who also came with them on this trip. She's kind of a key player in this because she's just part of of the god's plan to lure the Doctor to release the thing. She's good, and she's good as in her role, and the Chigaskas, this is where they get a little bit sort of, yeah, because like they recall the gods back to Aleppo, and the Chigaska appears again. It has stormed. Like I jumped when it appeared because I was like, oh, but really, it kind of like it was all this was going on. I thought brilliant, like build up, brilliant villain, brilliant everything so far, and then they just sort of poof the villain away, because like for example, they can control the Chigaska, and the gods left the trap or whatever on the ship that they were on, so they just picked it up and used it on them, and then they scared them with the Chigaska, like, and then literally it's gone, it's over, it's done, and that's it. It feels like 20 seconds from when they attack, when they confront each other to the Doctor winning. So that was just my main nitpick of the episode, that it was too easy, and and I thought it really let them down as villains, because I thought they were brilliant villains, brilliantly built up, and then it was too easy. But again, classic Chibnall era Who, the villains are not really like gone. They just put away on the shelf somewhere, and they're ready to call on at a moment's notice. Probably they'll come back in some form wanting revenge. But interesting how they sort of the same sort of celestial, eternal god things like the toy maker and stuff like that they referenced. But the reason why they sort of, I think why they finished it so early and sort of have this premature solving the problem, is because they dedicated a whole lot of time afterwards to talking and conversation and delivering messages, and seeing the effects that it had on the companions. They explained the whole Yaz's nightmare thing, and about how she was not doing well 3 years earlier. The policewoman came and helped her out. That's maybe what inspires her to become a police officer. She even goes to the police officer at the end based on the bet that they made 3 years earlier. So it's all a bit it's like we didn't even know that existed before this episode, and yet it's all dealt with in this episode. You see Ryan, having a good chat with his mate, and you see Graham talking to the Doctor about his feelings, about the cancer and things like that. So it's very much telling you, it's all about your mental health and things like that, which is a good enough message, I think. But the emphasis was like on the talking, not on the villains, which is weird because they spent so much time building them up. But it's I wouldn't say it's a bad message, but it's it just sort of happens, and it feels like a long time after they deal with the villains. It feels like a long time of talking, and if there was anything else as well to sort of rub it in there on the advert, after when they were showing the credits, the BBC thing popped up and it said, if you're struggling with mental health, there's people you can talk to, call this number, so it's very obvious from that aspect of it. But it is important. I did think it was funny how the Doctor just didn't have anything to say to Graham because she was socially awkward. But again, I suppose the point there is that there's emphasis on she was a year to listen to him, and I think that's fine. There's then at the end of the episode they were like, I was thinking Frankenstein, which is what the next episode is going to be. So it does give the feeling of like a continuous sort of journey, like they go in from one place to the next, to the next, to the next. But yeah, overall, I think it was a solid episode. The only things that I didn't like about it was that the villains were dealt with too easily. Like they were so good. Like I was totally like in awe of like these villains, and then they just sort of disappeared. And I think if you're gonna call them nightmare gods, like, and all powerful, then you need to be able to like give them a little bit more respect than that. But it is what it is. Like, and I think people will watch this episode, and if they're already in like set in their head that if it's political they're not going to like it, then they probably won't like this episode. But like, I think I can see what the BBC were trying to do here, but it was probably the best written version of it and the best way of dealing with it. Um, yeah, it works. I think it works on its own, and I think it does. It did bother me a little bit, the Sonic Screwdriver thing, but and again, there was a whole lot of talking, and I think that's where the Chris Chibnall credit comes in, because first of all there was the Timeless Child, but there wasn't even anything written for that. It was just her nightmare. But I think his writing credit comes with writing the nightmares of Yaz and Ryan and Graham and stuff like that, because they're his characters and he sort of built them up. But like, it's like that's what I mean. It's hard to tell what's him and what's the new writer. But if the new writer can, can do that again, like, and build up a villain like that, she can come back and do it again, because I think she was very good. And it was a well written episode, for at some point, but for most of it. But we just got to deal with it. How am I going to rate this? I think it was definitely better than Praxis, but what did I give Praxis? I think I give this a 7.6. Maybe again that was a bit too high. Like, bear in mind, once the series is over, I will do like a season long review to sort of maybe adjust some scores and see, and explain why I've adjusted them, and have a look at the series as a whole rather than on a week by week basis. But if it's better than Praxis, which it is, I would say I'm going to give it a 7.8. I think, because it works as an episode. It does have a message, but I think the message is a good one. And I think that less people will be more hostile to this message. I think less people will be hostile towards this message. I think that more people will accept this as an episode, because I think it's relatable for so many people. But yeah, what can I say? Next week, last episode before the explosive 2-part finale. Are you looking forward to it? Are you going to see how, got any theories about how it's all going to go? Yeah, let us know in the comments. Let's talk about what you thought about that episode, and where you think the series is going. But yeah, thanks very much for watching, guys. Make sure you click like and subscribe. Like I said earlier, giveaway when we reach 1,000 subs. We're giving away Comic-Con tickets, so make sure you help us out. And if you like these videos, give us a like as well. And I'll see you in the next review. So thanks very much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye.